All right, we are down to our final pre-prepared question, question number 8. And in the rotations, but remind me where we're at, because I've lost track.
I think I started the last one, didn't I? 8. I did start the last one.
Yeah.
Mr. Lucero. Great, thank you. You know, you get over 50 and it just starts going. Very good. Question number 8. Explain your position on the unionization of federal government employees, including the right to work and the right for a union to negotiate employment terms when budget allocations for those agencies are determined by Congress. And we begin with Mr. Lucero, correct?
No,
Mr. Romero. Okay, please forgive me. Mr. Romero.
Our government cannot sustain itself if we allow employees that work for the government unionize. In California right now, there are 2 teachers that are suing, and it's at the Supreme Court. They feel that if they belong to the union, they don't have to pay for dues if the union is not listening to their beliefs, and or belong to the union if it's a closed shop state. And I believe California is. So if the business or the structure that they seek employment at is unionized, they have to join the union to get the job. How is that democratic? I worked in Nevada as a police officer, and it's a right to work, as New Mexico should be. So I joined the union because it benefited me. After 10 to 12 years, they started to get the attitude that we're collecting your dues and we're going to do what we want. We're not going to listen to you anymore. A third of us unionized in turn and got ready to form a separate union. Guess how quickly those individuals changed their mind? In half an hour. Because they knew they were going to lose a third of their revenue. And in turn, it brings in industry. Nevada's booming. I don't know where they're on the chart, but I know New Mexico's 49th and 50th. If we change the laws in this state and make it a right to work, it'll open all kinds of doors. And in turn, privatize most of the federal property and lands that don't belong to the federal government, which in turn, we are the government. Return it to the states. So with right to work and returning most of our federal lands back to the state, it would change the whole dynamic.
Thank you. Mr. McFall.
I'm sure most of you agree with me that every government agency that we deal with is not run very efficiently. This is really because there's no bottom line they have to meet. Private business has to meet a bottom line, otherwise they have no profits and they go out of business. The government doesn't have to work that way. Government employees should get a wage that's comparable to a similar job in the private sector and be given a raise based on productivity, if there is such a thing in the federal government. If they're not happy with that job or the way they're getting raised, they can always go get a job in the private sector. Right to work is simple. You should not have to belong to a union just to get a job. In a union and with union contracts, the least productive worker and the most productive worker get a raise based on what's written in the contract. That doesn't leave for any incentive. If you work harder, you get a better raise, or if you don't work, you don't get a raise. Everyone gets a raise because there is a contract. There's no motivation there. All the records show in economics that the right to work states have a better economy than the ones that do not have an economy, or a right to work. So it's pretty simple. We should be a right to work state or work toward that because it simply promotes jobs and helps the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lucero.
Okay, to be completely honest with you, I am part of a union. I'm part of the union there in Los Alamos. I'm on the Union Guard Force. I'm telling you that because I don't want any hidden agenda whatsoever. I'm putting myself out there. I helped negotiate the contract for that union, over a $40 million contract over 5 years. So I've sat there and dealt with it. I have. The problem isn't the fact that there's unions. The problem is when Congress sets a budget, by the time it gets to the actual on-the-ground work, which it was intended for, there's 10 different agencies that put their hand in it and pull out of the cookie jar. So of course you're gonna have fighting, and the main fight right now is over healthcare. The healthcare is broken. I'm sorry, I dealt with it firsthand. It's very tough for people to go out and get healthcare right now. So of course people are gonna try to protect themselves. That's just the way it is. You can't blame a person for taking care of themselves, right? But there's a way to do it. Both sides have to be smart enough to understand that, look, we can sit here and negotiate and we can argue all you want, or we can both be men about this and we can solve this issue, no problem. The original intent of unions was to protect them from bad, really bad work environments. It's changed a little bit, and I don't totally agree that they should be able to fight for wages, and most unions these days aren't trying that. It's over healthcare. Obama put that in front of us. He's the cause of that.
Thank you. Mr. Romero, would you like a 1 minute rebuttal?
I believe Mr. Lucero didn't answer the question. Is he for right to work or closed shop? Franklin Roosevelt warned us against, of all people, the socialist, well, I guess there's other words, but he said that if the federal government allowed its workers to unionize, it was not a good thing. Because it's an inside track. They basically making themselves a good wage, a good job. Going back to the Forest Service, the individual sitting in that seat that runs the office, they never leave their office. They're always going to training, they're always going to seminars. She didn't even know the road that I was working on existed until I took her there. That was after 3 years. So they've created themselves a very cushioned job. And they, as anything else, for you to perform and do it right, something has to be on the line. Right now there isn't.
Thank you. Mr. McFall?
I'd like to add, at one point in U.S. history, there was definitely a need for unions because of employers that were treating their employees like slaves and bad work places, unsafe workplaces. And at one point, there was nearly, I believe, 70% of workers were in unions. Now it's down around 13 to 18% of people belong to a union in the workforce. So what the need for them has kind of gone the way of the dodo. But the fact remains that when you just look at it from an economical point of view, every place where it's right to work has a better economy with higher paying jobs than a place that has, that's for unions. The right to work does work, and it helps the economy and wages go up.
Thank you. Mr. Lucero, would you like a 1 minute rebuttal?
Yes. So, first of all, I'm not hiding from the question. I told you exactly where I stand. People need to be able to protect themselves. Now, whether that's right to work or not, we're not talking about private, we're talking about federal government. And I don't know what the fear is of federal government, because they can't lock themselves out. They can't go on strike. It doesn't create a government shutdown. Now, it's very easy to say, I stand for right to work. It's very easy to say that. It would be a little bit harder for me if I came from a union to tell you that.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our